Hey YouTube, Kevin Cleary here, and today I want to talk about pry tools. Now before I do that, I want to ask you what knife you carry the most, or even what style of knife, and what you usually use it for. And that goes a long way in identifying whether or not you want or should carry a pry tool. The other thing I'd like to ask you here is, what pry tool have you found particularly useful, that's easy to carry, that you've found that it's come through for you a number of times, that you just find really good? By the way, sorry about the lighting there, but there is a little bit of breeze that's come up and it's moving the curtains ever so slightly, as you can see. I don't want to move because the lighting here is actually quite good right now, just based on the time of day. So let's go ahead and get into that. I'd love to hear down below about those things that I asked you, as well as anything else you may want to comment. But before we get into the full pry tool discussion, let's take a look at these two knives very quickly. First one here is the Real Steel Megalodon, and this is a fantastic knife. Actually a knife that I would not hesitate to recommend to just about anyone. The problem with it is, though, if there is a problem, or if this could even be called a problem, is that the blade is quite thin and quite slight. Now what that means is there's maybe a little more potential for breaking or damaging this blade than there would be with some other knives. Now that makes it a fantastic cutting tool, and so I really don't feel like the thinness and the slightness is a problem, but it does mean that you're not going to want to do any prying with this knife. The other knife I've got here for you is the Curtis F3. Now, could you pry with this knife? Yeah, probably. Look at that blade and look at the spanto grind there. Very, very heavy duty. The problem, though, is that this is a very expensive knife. And so do I even want to take the chance? Do I even want to risk breaking it? And I know I could send it back to Dave and he would fix it for me, and that's great, and that's one of the benefits of having a custom knife. However, do I really want that? Do I want to have to send this knife, risk the issues that could come up with customs, have to worry about being without a knife that I really like for who knows how long, depending on how busy Dave is? Probably not. So most of the time I'm going to look at a potential prying prying need and say, yeah, I don't think I'm going to do it with this knife. I'll pick something else. And that's where all of these pry tools come in. So let me move these knives out of the way and we'll get a few examples in here. This is the CRKT Viva, I believe. Let me double check the name on that guy. Yeah, this is the Viva, designed by Liang Ma. This is a Kershaw pry tool. Whoops, I don't think it's a K tool. I think it's called something else, but whatever the name is, the model number is 8800, so you should be able to find it on Amazon by doing that, or just searching pry tool or Kershaw pry tool. This is the Night Eyes doohickey. Very, very small, very easy to clip onto your keys, and somewhat effective. And then finally I've got another Kershaw pry tool. This is a slightly larger one, and I do like this one an awful lot. You can see it sort of looks like a fish, and that's kind of a thing these days, to design these tools to look like some animal, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. I guess, to each his own. Anyway, so let's talk about some of the pluses, minuses about pry tools, how I have prioritized these and what has been appealing to me, and hopefully make some recommendations for you guys as well. So obviously the first question is, how useful is this tool? Is it going to do the job that I want it to do? Which is going to be primarily prying, or jamming it into something that we want to keep open, or anything we feel like could damage the edge of our knife. I'm going to opt to use one of these tools instead. As you can see right now, this one's on my keychain, so it's the one I'm going to be using most of the time right now. But I've used all of these. I've used them for scraping, I've used them for prying, I've used them for breaking open a little piece of plastic, or trying to push in a tab that I can't get a hold of. And they are a useful thing to have in your pocket. So let's assess usefulness just a little bit to start off. Now obviously there's a connection between usefulness and size. So this one is not going to give you maybe as much leverage as you would always want, and it's not going to give you much reach either. Now none of these are going to give you a ton of reach, but this one I have found particularly challenging to get. If I've got something that's actually really hard to move, I've found this one maybe not quite big enough or grippy enough to do everything. Although, it's still very, very useful to have around, and I don't want to, take anything away from this, because for its size and its weight, it's extremely good. Moving up in the world a little bit to this guy, it's a little more useful. There's a little more grip here. I can pry a little bit harder with it, but I've also got that nice little screwdriver on this side, just a slot screwdriver, and I have used that. Now this, I don't know, it sure looks like an O2 opening valve. This would work for an O2 bottle. Haven't tried it. I really should do that, and if I do and mention it, I'll try to mention it in a future video whether or not that fits an O2 bottle. But a little more useful because of its size, because of some extra options on it. And as we continue going up, yes, you move to something like this, and you do get a little more leverage. You get a little easier to hold on to. You can, get maybe a little more done with this, but it's awfully large. And putting this on your keychain, I don't think is terribly practical. And I've tried it on my keychain and couldn't do it. So I've carried this mostly in pocket, and in that way of carry, it's not bad, but this is not practical for me because I cannot remember it. I guess it's good that it disappears in pocket. On the bad side though, I often, this thing's been through the laundry, been lost multiple times because I can't remember that I have it in my pocket and I end up losing it. So that's sort of what would you say, the scale there that exists. Now I will also add this. When you're thinking of usefulness and utility of your tool, I think cost has to be considered there because I don't want to get into the situation. There are some really nice custom-made pry tools out there, but I don't want to get into the same situation that I'm in with my knife where, I'm going, I don't want to do that job because I may break it. The whole reason I'm carrying a pry tool is so that I can avoid, using my knife. And I want to be able to do stuff with a fair amount of confidence that even if I break it, I don't really care because I'm just going to throw it away and buy a new one. So price, I think, actually ties into utility when we're talking about pry tools. Finally, the number of tools that it has, and we haven't really touched on that. You can see you've got a pry, a cap lifter, and a couple little hex wrench sizes. Here you've got a few more wrench sizes, as well as a cap lifter and a pry tool. This one actually has the most stuff in that it's got a can opener, a cap lifter, a bit of an attempt anyway. Let me get this close and close for you. An attempt at a Phillips screwdriver, which does kind of work. I've actually used this a fair bit. I've also found this really useful for opening paint cans, and it even has this little notch in it that maybe could potentially fit around a nail or something. Although this is going to be pretty small to try and pry out nails with. I would probably recommend something else. And then over on this end, you do have a pretty nice little slot screwdriver. So, most number of tools on this guy, and I have found this one to be pretty useful and easy to carry. It strikes a nice balance, which, I feel like I'm a broken record talking about balance here. It seems like I'm always talking about that. Let's get this so that my keys can be a little further out of the picture. There we go. So that's how I've sort of assessed all of these tools with, in terms of how beneficial they are or how much I dislike or like them. And I've really found this one, which is, I guess I should have shown you that when we had it up here. All right, focus. Come on. There we go. This is the 8810, and the smaller one was the 8800. I think they have names. I just can't remember what they are right now. So these are, a few little multi-tools, and there are literally dozens of them out there. There's Charade has 2 or 3, Gerber has a number of them, Leatherman has some. Some of them have different tools, especially the Leathermans seem to have a lot of extra tools on them, which is fine. The other thing, and so those are all, there are lots of other options out there, and I'm trying to primarily give you considerations that you might find useful in sort of picking those other options, okay? So, now, one last thing I want to add, and that is to remind you that there is such a thing as a mini multi-tool that for some of you, you may find more useful. Things like the Gerber Dime, the Gerber Curve, a small Swiss Army knife. I think the Cadet is the little one that everyone really likes. Leatherman Squirt, Leatherman Micra, which is an older one, but still good and still available out there. There's one that I used to have, and I'm trying to think of the name. Leatherman Style, which I've given away. But all those little multi-tools are, again, very handy and would serve the function of one of these pry tools, although they're a little more bulky to carry, and that's why I have gone this route. So those are all various options that you have. I'm going to say out of all of these pry tools, I tend to prefer this one the best. I find it strikes the nicest balance between the number of tools that it has, how easy it is to carry, and how I'm not inclined to lose it. This one, I think, as I mentioned, I have had a hard time holding on to. I keep losing it because it's very small, very lightweight, and it just disappears in your pocket, which is great, except I forget I've got it in there, and it ends up going through the laundry or falling out on the floor when I hang up my clothes, and then I just don't know where it is. So there's lots and lots of options out here, and I think all of these are great, and all of them have been very useful to me. So just wanted to make that recommendation, especially if you're a new knife guy. If you're watching this because you've seen some of my knife videos, I'm going to recommend any pry tool at all is going to be better than the blade of your knife, either just because it's going to dull your knife or because you really could run the risk of damaging something. And if you have got a knife that you really like and really treasure, it's better to break this and throw it away than break the knife that you had to save for, or maybe it was hard to find or whatever else. Hope you liked the video. Again, I'd love to hear your recommendations down below, especially for the multi-tools or the pry tools that you use and have really enjoyed. And don't forget to like and subscribe. We will talk to you soon.